Princess Diana's sudden death in 1997 shocked the whole world and broke the hearts of many people who had loved her for years. After her sad passing, her devoted butler, Paul Burl, kept her secrets safe with strong devotion. But Burl has finally chosen to speak out, and he told a shocking truth that no one saw coming. He said that the real problem from the start was that Charles didn't know what love was. He talked about his time with Diana in a way that was very personal and eye-opening. So, get ready, because this video will show Diana's private moments and the heartbreaking details of that terrible night from Burl's unique point of view. From a poor background, Paul Burl rose to become Princess Diana's valued confidant. This shows how dedicated and loyal he was to the people's princess. Burl was born in Grassmoor, Derbyshire, in 1958. His early life was very different from that of the British royal family. He knew how to work hard, even though he came from a working-class family. This made him stand out from his peers. Burl's royal job began when he was 18 and moved in with the Queen. The royal staff quickly noticed how hard he worked, how much he cared, and how much he paid attention to details. He got his big break when Queen Elizabeth II made him her special footman. This gave him a look at how the royal family works from the inside. When Burl was hired as Diana, Princess of Wales's butler, in 1987, his career took a big step forward. That person had to be completely honest and faithful at all times. It wasn't just a job. Diana had a rough marriage to Prince Charles and was always being watched by the world. Burl was a rock she could lean on. Over time, their bond grew stronger, going from a business arrangement to a real friendship. In addition to his normal tasks as a butler, Burl ran Diana's household, planned her public appearances, and made sure she was comfortable. Diana got a ring from a lover and asked Paul Burl what she should do with it. This is a memorable moment that perfectly shows how close they were. It was Diana's trust in Burl and his ability to understand her that made her wear it on her fourth finger on her right hand. They had times when they trusted and relied on each other, and Burl often listened to Diana's worries, hopes, and dreams as a friend and ally. Because they were so close, he had a special look into her life that he now wants to share with everyone. Along with his official tasks, Burl was always a source of stability and normalcy for Diana. He was often with her when she went out in public, which made her feel safer in the midst of all the attention. Diana felt more confident and able to handle her hard job because he was good at predicting her wants and needs. Burl was also very important to Diana's charity work. He planned her visits to hospitals, shelters, and other groups, making sure that every contact was meaningful and from the heart. His knowledge of Diana's caring nature and her desire to help others sheds light on her heritage. Burl was Diana's trusted friend and knew all of her deepest thoughts and feelings. She told him about her problems with bulimia, how she felt alone in the royal family, and her need for love and acceptance. Burl says Diana told him in secret that she was having a boy while she was pregnant with Prince William. How close Diana and Paul Burl were to each other is clear from these heartfelt talks. They paint a touching picture of a woman whose loyal maid was by her side through hard times and a lot of attention from the public. The plot thickens as Princess Diana's maid finally speaks out and drops shocking hints that everyone is talking about. The things Burl told us are the first time we've had a full picture of what happened after the princess died and how important he was to those events. The night of August 31st, 1997, is one of the saddest and most important events in recent history. The quick and shocking death of Princess Diana in a car accident in Paris broke the hearts of everyone around the world. This night was the start of a very sad loss and a set of events that would change Paul Burl's life. He was so sad when he heard the news, even though he wasn't in Paris. When he first heard about Diana's accident, he was at home in England. In the beginning, he was shocked and scared. He talks about how he was calling people all the time, trying to get as much information as he could about the accident and Diana's condition. Burl was filled with sadness and a sense of hopelessness when the sad news of Diana's death was confirmed. He describes those hours as a blur of sadness and a strong need to honor her memory and help the people she left behind. Right away, he thought about Diana's young boys, Prince William and Prince Harry, and how much pain they would be in the days to come. That was the start of Burl's hugely expanded role. Paul Burl was very active in planning Princess Diana's funeral. He made sure that every part of it honored her memory and spirit. He worked hard to remember Diana in the best way possible, from choosing the flowers to planning the music. He worked closely with the royal family to help them deal with both the public mourning and their own deep personal pain. It's clear from Burl's very emotional writing about this time that he was under a lot of pressure to stay calm while doing his job. Because he knew Diana's likes and dislikes and her nature well, he was able to plan a respectful. Millions of people came together to mourn Diana's death, and Burl worked behind the scenes to make sure that her last trip was full of love and respect. In the days after Diana died, he had a lot of feelings and things he needed to do. He remembers how sad everyone was and how many honors and condolences came in from all over the world. Along with the problems with logistics, Burl also had to deal with the difficult relationships within the royal family. It was easy to feel the sadness and shock, and tensions were high as everyone dealt with their feelings. During this tough time, Burl's role as Diana's trusted confidant and advisor became even more important, helping and supporting those closest to her. Paul Burl's honest and detailed story is one of the few that shows what happened before and after Princess Diana's death. When Diana died, Burl's life changed in a big way. He had a hard time at work and at home in the years that followed, as he tried to get used to life without the woman he had loved so much. Being in the public eye all the time and trying to stay quiet made Burl's life hard and complicated. In his career, the future looked unclear. Because he learned them in the unique setting of the royal family, they weren't easy to use in other situations. He turned to writing and TV, and several books were written about his time as a king. Many people were upset about this, even though it gave him a way to tell his story. Some people thought that what he said broke trust, which made his ties with the royal family worse. When Burl was accused of taking Diana's things in 2002, it was one of the hardest times of his life. The court case was very heated, and Burl said he had taken the things to keep them safe with the Queen's knowledge. After the Queen confirmed that Burl had in fact told her about the things, the case was finally dropped. But the debate brought out how many people were uncomfortable with Burl's close relationship with Diana, and it was clear that some people loved him. Even though Burl was deeply sad, he had a long and difficult road ahead of him. Many people paid more attention to Paul Burl after Princess Diana died than they ever had before. Every part of his life was looked at closely, and a lot of the time, it wasn't pretty. He had to deal with charges, wild rumors, and harsh public judgment, all the while trying to keep things normal. He felt a lot of mental and emotional pain from this constant pressure, which made him think a lot and have doubts. Even though things were hard, Burl was still determined to honor Diana's spirit. That's when he finally broke his quiet. He wanted to end things and tell the truth. He knew that talking about his experiences would help people get a fuller picture of Diana's life and impact by showing them the real woman behind the public image. Paul Burl then began to tell his story. He stopped keeping Diana's secrets for years and started talking about them in public, in interviews, and in books. His statements shocked and touched people deeply. He was honest about Diana's mental health problems, how lonely she felt in the royal family, and her ongoing search for love and respect. Letters from Diana that had never been seen before were one of the most shocking things he said. Diana wrote these letters to talk about her worries about a possible plan to damage her car. It's scary to think that she might have known about possible threats to her life after this new information came to light about her death. After Paul Burl broke his silence, there was a lot of new debate and speculation in the news and among the public. Many long-held suspicions about Diana's death were confirmed, which added fuel to the fire of the ongoing discussion. Burl felt a lot of different feelings when he told his story. He said it was both healing and painful, like going on a trip through happy memories and scary ones. Even though it was freeing to finally speak out, it was also painful to face the truths of loss and betrayal. People had different reactions to what he said. Some people liked getting new information and a better understanding of Diana's life, but others were suspicious of his reasons and the time of his revelations. Even though there was reaction, Burl stayed focused on honoring Diana's memory and telling the truth about his time with her. Burl broke his silence to clear up misunderstandings and stories about Diana's life and death. His in-depth and personal account gave us a more humanized view of the princess, showing her flaws and strengths and the huge effect she had on those around her. Burl's admissions were about more than just his own problems. He also talked about Diana's work with charities and the problems she faced behind the scenes. He told stories about how Diana used her fame for good, often going up against red tape and opposition from the royal institution to support the causes she cared about. Paul Burl's revelations gave a clear picture of Princess Diana's private life and showed how brave she was and how much she cared about important issues. His stories showed how hard she worked to make the world a better place by talking about her fights against poisons and her work with HIV/AIDS patients. Burl also told us about Diana's love life, including her friendship with Dodi Fayed. He told him about Diana's happy times and plans for the future, which gave him a look into her search for love and happiness outside of public view. What happened to Burl when he broke his quiet changed him. It freed him from the weight of keeping secrets and let him respect Diana in a way that felt true to his life. People had different reactions to what he said, but there is no doubt that it helped people learn more about Diana and her lasting impact. People got to know Princess Diana's private life in a way that had never been possible before through Burl's stories. His stories showed not only how compassionate she was in public, but also how deeply she cared about other people. He talked about how Diana often went out of her way to help people who were in need. For example, she would visit hospitals and shelters without drawing attention to herself and offer comfort and support to those who were hurting. These stories that were never told gave us a fuller picture of Diana. They showed her as a complicated person with many sides who really wanted to make the world a better place. Paul Burl's revelations about Princess Diana's personal life showed how kind she was and how much she wanted to make a difference in the lives of those less wealthy. He talked about how Diana went to hospitals and homes because she really cared about other people and wanted to help them. Burl also talked about how Diana was weak and how she wanted to be happy. In his talk, he talked about how her bulimia got worse because of the stress of her public role and her difficult marriage. Diana's private statements to Burl about being lonely and feeling inadequate were heartbreaking. They were very different from how confident and beautiful she seemed in public. Diana loved her kids very much and worked hard to make them feel like their lives were normal, even though she was a princess. She often played with them and made memories that will last a lifetime away from the stage. It was clear that she loved Prince William and Prince Harry and was eager to make sure they were happy and healthy. Burl also talked about Diana's love life, including her hopes for true love and the broken hearts she went through. Her troubled marriage to Prince Charles is well known, but Burl's writings gave us a better look into the mental problems she had. He also talked about how she felt about her relationship with Dodi Fayed, which was one of love and respect. The sad end of this relationship in a car accident showed how Diana was still looking for love and happiness. Diana's emotional journey was shown in Burl's stories, as well as the unusual steps she took to protect her privacy and the privacy of those she cared about. Paul Burl told some touching stories about how Princess Diana did a lot to keep her life normal, even though reporters were always following her around. He talked about how Diana would meet with friends and confidants behind closed doors to avoid the cameras that were always there. It was clear that she wanted a normal life and was always trying to find the right balance between her public duties and her personal time. One story that really moved me was about Diana's secret visit to a young boy with cystic fibrosis. Diana's deep empathy and compassion were shown by this act of kindness, which Burl set up to avoid media notice. For her, these private meetings were very important because they gave her comfort and a sense of purpose through personal connections. Burl also helped us understand how close Diana was to famous people like Elton John and Gianni Versace. Having these relationships gave Diana support and friendship during hard times. They also gave her a sense of connection and understanding that was missing in the royal family. Burl gave us a better picture of Princess Diana through these personal stories. He talked about not only how strong she seemed in public, but also how weak she was and how much she cared. People were able to see Diana as a complicated person who dealt with big problems with grace and strength thanks to these stories. Paul Burrow's knowledge of how the royal family works helped us understand better the problems Princess Diana had. He saw for himself how her close relationships with important family members, especially Prince Charles, affected her life. Burrow said that Diana's early marriage days were bright and full of promise. Everyone loved seeing the young couple start their trip together, but it was clear right away that the marriage was having problems. Diana's relationship with Charles was very tense because he was still deeply attached to Camilla Parker Bowles. Diana felt a lot of pain and fear because of this situation. In her story, Burrow talked about some tense times between Diana and Charles, showing how it affected her emotionally. He talked about a clear memory of a fight between Diana and Charles when Diana found a ring that Charles had meant for Camilla. Diana was crushed when she saw this sign of his ongoing relationship with Camilla. She cried and felt very lost. Burrow said that this moment showed how hard things were for Diana because she was dealing with cheating and mental neglect in her marriage. Diana had a lot of different kinds of ties with other royal family members. She felt connected and friendly at times, especially with the Queen, but she often felt like she didn't belong. She and the Queen loved and respected each other, but sometimes They didn't understand each other because of age and culture differences. Diana stayed committed to her part and duties despite these problems. She tried to balance her personal problems with her public duties. Paul Burrell's knowledge of how the royal family works also sheds light on Diana's unexpected backing. He talked about times when other family members understood how hard things were for her and offered support and encouragement. These times gave Diana the comfort and strength she needed, which made her stronger and more determined. The events that led to Princess Diana's death have been suggested and discussed many times. These conversations started up again after Paul Burrell's revelations, which brought up new facts and unsettling questions about the official story of her death. What Burrell revealed shocked everyone. It was a secret letter from Diana in which she talked about her worries that her car might be sabotaged. This letter made it seem like Diana knew that her life might be in danger, which added another layer of mystery to the terrible events of August 31st, 1997. Because this letter was found, there were ideas that Diana's death might not have been an accident, but rather the result of a planned murder that involved people in the royal family. The official result was that the crash happened because the driver was drunk and the paparazzi were following them around all the time. The official investigation said the accident was tragic and caused by the driver's carelessness, but Burrell's ideas have made this finding less certain. People who see things from his point of view think that the whole truth about Diana's death may still be found. There is a strong case for re-examining the events that led to Diana's death because of the chance of foul play and Burrell's personal knowledge of her fears. It wasn't a surprise that the people and media were very angry about what Paul Burrell said. A lot of people were shocked by the new information and what it meant. Some people believed Burrell's stories because he was close to Diana, but others didn't trust him and didn't understand why he told them at that time. People want a more in-depth look into Diana's death because of the fresh interest in her story. People and advocacy groups wanted the proof to be looked at again so that the whole story could be found. This movement showed how Diana's life still affects people and brought attention to the ongoing search for justice and peace. The public's response to Burrell's decision to speak out also showed how powerful personal evidence can be in shaping historical stories. His detailed accounts helped people understand things better and led to arguments and discussions that went far beyond the initial discoveries. The fact that people were interested in Burrell's story showed how Diana's legacy lives on and how the search for truth continues. Burrell added to the current conversation about Diana's legacy with the things he said. Even though his ideas were controversial, they gave us useful new ways to think about what happened when she died and how the royal family works. Even though Princess Diana has been gone for decades, her influence is still very strong. Diana became a global icon through her non-profit work, her empathy, and her amazing ability to connect with people from all walks of life. Paul Burrell, Diana's butler, talked about how dedicated she was to helping others and how she was a real leader in spreading information about AIDS, landmines, and homelessness. When she did charity work, Diana was known for getting her hands dirty. She often went to hospitals, shelters, and disaster areas to show support and kindness. One of the most important things she did was to stop making AIDS look bad by shaking hands with people who had it. This showed how committed she was to human rights without fear. When Burrell thinks about Diana's legacy, she hopes that she will be known not only for her sad death, but also for her important contributions to society and her strong spirit. He thinks that her life should make people more caring and active. When Burrell talks about Diana's private problems, it makes her legacy more human by telling us that behind the public image was a woman who had a lot of problems and was looking for happiness and meaning in her life. There is no doubt that Diana had a huge effect on the world. She changed what it meant to be a member of the royal family by using her power to bring important problems to people's attention and connect with them on a personal level. People outside of the royal family loved her because she was friendly, understanding, and truly cared about others. The fact that Paul Burrell broke his quiet and talked about what he had been through gives us a unique and important look into Diana's life. His revelations give us a look into her private battles and victories, showing how complex she is as a person and how long her journey has been. Burrell's ideas help us see Diana not only as a famous person, but also as a strong woman who dealt with huge problems with ease. The way he wrote about Diana makes us remember that her impact is not just her sad death, but also her amazing kindness and ability to connect with people from all walks of life. The story told by Burrell is an important addition to the ongoing conversation about Diana because it shows how human she was and how much of an effect she had on the world. Her life, which was full of both good and bad things, continues to inspire and attract people all over the world. Diana's story by Burrell makes sure that people remember not only the problems she had to deal with, but also how strong and gracefully she did so. The things Paul Burrell told us about Princess Diana definitely help us understand her life better. By giving private information and personal stories, Burrell shows how Diana was human, how strong she was, and how complicated her life was. His writings give us a fuller picture of Diana, showing both her struggles and the lasting effects she had on the world. When we think about why Burrell broke his quiet, it's clear that Diana's story continues to move and inspire people. Her life, which was full of both good and bad things, is still a strong example of kindness and strength. Diana's story will not only be remembered as a sad one, but also as a powerful example of strength and kindness, thanks in large part to Burrell's insights. What do you think about Burrell's choice to tell these private stories about Princess Diana and how they change the way we think about her? Share your thoughts below.